and sit down and talk with you about the Sunshine Children's Home Offsite Well Monitoring Program. My name is Sabrina Charney Hull. I'm sure many of you have seen my name, emails, etc. I am the Director of Planning for the town of Newcastle. Tonight I'm here with Hydro Environmental Solutions, HES, Bill Canavan and his associate Patrick. They're going to talk to us mainly about the data that's been collected, how it's being collected, and kind of give you a sense of what this program is all about. I'm going to start with an introduction of the program, the purpose of the program, but before I do that, I'd like to introduce Ivy Poole, who is a member of the Newcastle Town Board. If you guys want to come a little bit closer, so that people can hear you. There are microphones in the room. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded for replay later on as well. So to give you kind of a quick summary, the purpose of the Offsite Well Monitoring meeting. As the Sunshine Children's Home expansion project was going through the approval process, it was under a special exception use permit before the town's zoning board of appeals. It also needed to go before the town planning board for its environmental permitting. And part of all of the analysis that was done, one of the issues that came up was water use. Water use was investigated on the site based on what the historical usage on site. I think it was, I want to say, hang on. On-site, there are 3 on-site wells with a production capacity of 48,560 gallons per day of water. The existing facility requires 15,000 gallons per day to operate, and these are numbers that are regulated by the Westchester County Health Department. The 3 on-site wells are considered a community water supply under the jurisdiction of a licensed operator and operated and overseen by the Westchester County Health Department. The 15,000 gallons of water being used today on site are primarily 10,000 gallons are used for irrigation purposes right now, and the remaining 5,000 gallons per day are used for water use for the actual residents on site and other buildings. So there's a large water usage on site for irrigation purposes. Understanding the water use, working with Westchester County, the County Health Department examined the proposed expansion and made a determination that the facility would need to supply 99 gallons per bed on site. That equated to a demand of 12,078 gallons per day, and that would be for 122 beds. During the review of the project, there was some concerns about water use on the property. As part of the approvals, the Sunshine Children's Home agreed to separate their irrigation water from their well usage. They are no longer, once the new facility opens, going to be using well water for irrigation purposes. They have designed a landscape plan which includes native species, drought-tolerant species, and they have green infrastructure, storage tanks, recirculation tanks for watering purposes only. They have committed to limit their water usage on site to what is being used today. The Westchester County Health Department has approved that usage. All of this was vetted through the approval processes, and there have been controls put in place by the town, by the County Health Department to ensure that we are watching the water use on site. So you say to me, why are we doing an off-site monitoring program? With all of the restrictions that the applicant said that they would implement on site, they also volunteered to do an off-site monitoring program, primarily because there is no historical hydrological data regarding off-site wells. There's historical usage regarding on-site usage, but somebody's private wells, there's not a historical record. There's only the analyses that were done at the time of the application before the town, as well as the historical data that was collected because they are a public water supply. So the applicant agreed. We are going to monitor off-site wells. We're going to monitor wells that are within a 1,500-foot radius from the project site. If we cannot acquire enough wells to substantiate the program in that 1,500-foot radius. Then we're going to bump out to the 2,500-foot radius. They are monitoring for quantity only. It is a quantity monitoring program. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Canavan and his associate to talk about how it's being done and what it all means. Bill?
Thanks, Sabrina.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Canavan. I work with Hydro Environmental Solutions. I'm a hydrogeologist, been doing it for about 31 years. This is Patrick Monterey. He's one of our geologists. He's here because he does a lot of the field legwork. So when we're discussing what's actually going on in the field, I might ask him some questions, or you guys might ask him some questions. We put together a PowerPoint program, and that was a good introduction by Sabrina, and we'll take you through actually what's going on out in the field. So we're all here to discuss Sunshine Children's Home Offsite Well Monitoring Program. Okay, 2 summary slides. I'll just go through them with you. Pressure transducer data loggers were set in 8 offsite wells. We've labeled them wells A through H. They surround the subject property, and they're within that 2,500-foot radius that Sabrina spoke of earlier. I believe we got involved with the whole review of the program, and I believe there was something like, what, 68 letters we said?
79.
79 offsite well owners were solicited with a letter that said, hey, well owner, this is what's going on. We want to monitor your well. 10 or 12, was it 10 or 11? I think it's 11. 11 replied back and said, we want our well monitored. Got out there in the field. Some of them were inaccessible. That's how he got to 8 wells, okay? The official startup date of the program was July 20th, 2018. That's when the last data logger was set in a well. There were some set prior to that, but that's the benchmark, okay, July 20th. 6 months of data, background data has been collected as of January 20th of this year. Us, HES, provided oversight of data logger installation and data downloads. So we literally were out there at each, and I'll show you pictures, at each of the residential properties. Anybody in the room is having their well monitored? Is anybody here? Okay, so they don't know. But anyway, we went around to these 8 and watched and saw what they were doing, and then we had our laptop and we actually plugged in, made sure it was working, and cross-checked, and we'll show you how we did it to make sure the data logs are working properly. Do you want to do questions now or wait till the end?
Questions now.
Okay, you got a question?
Just please state your name.
Karen Wells, can you please tell us what 8 wells were monitored?
Yep, I'll get to that. I got a nice map and I'll show you where they all are, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. HES reviews the applicant's data in hydrographs, and we'll show you a bunch of examples, and independently plots our own hydrographs. So we collect the same data from the data logger, and we plot our own hydrographs. We also confirm the water level in each well using an M-scope during each data download, and I'm going to show you how that works. We review the monthly water use report. So their Class C operator through WSP, the applicant's consultant, provides us with their water use on the 3 wells, 1, 2, and 3.
That's on site.
They're on-site wells. That's what's supplying the facility. They're all individually metered, and then there's one master meter that says you use 5,000 gallons a day combined, and I'll explain that in a little more. The monthly reports provided by Sunshine's, I already said that. The wells are metered, I told you that. So we, HES, compares the pumping rates of the wells to the hydrographs, and we look for off-site well interference and drawdown effects. And I'm going to show you examples of one of our other sites so you can see actually what an off-site drawdown effect looks like. To date, we have not seen any drawdown effects related to on-site pumping from the 3 on-site wells. Karen, right? That was your, okay, these are the wells we're monitoring. I can point from here. This is the site outline, wells 1, 2, and 3. And then there's, as I said earlier, there was 11 wells, but the ones in yellow are the 8 that we're monitoring. This is the 2,500-foot radius, the blue line. This is a 1,000-foot radius, the red dotted line, okay, right there. And the other thing we asked of the applicant, I don't know how carefully you've read stuff or been following it, we said it'd be good if you could plot all the wells and then do what we call fracture trace analysis. So we get aerial photos. They did this. We do it all the time. But the applicant geologist looked at aerial photos and came up with what we call regional water-bearing features, like lineaments or fractures that are visible in stereo on aerial photos, okay? So that geology was overlain.
So can you just orient us to what, oh, there's.
Guys,
There's
can
one
I
right
ask you a
there.
question? If you're not gonna sit towards the front of the room, or you're gonna sit on the side, I'm gonna need you to use the microphone to ask your question, so that we can get you on, it comes through over the live streaming.
This is gonna be online too, right?
Yes, we will place
So
this
you
online.
can take whatever pictures you want. I'm not really that photogenic, but any stuff you guys want to take pictures of is fine, but it's gonna all be online anyway, okay? So you can look at this whole presentation for you to go through. It's really good if you can't sleep at night, right? All right, so I want to show you some of the stuff we do in the field, okay? So this is a picture of a residential supply well. Some people don't realize that piece of steel with a cap on it is actually their well. That's a well, that's the well cap, there's the casing. This is a data logger. Here's a data logger here. This is a 500-foot data logger cable. This is what we call a mini troll 700, okay? So if there's any boaters in the room, your boat has a transducer on it. It tells you you're in 10 feet of water, you're in 150 feet of water, you're in 2 feet of water. Well, this thing works the same way. We drop it in a well. There it is. We were going to put it down the well there, okay? We open the well and drop it down. And we'll set it 200-300 feet into the well, submerge a couple hundred feet into the water, and then we start the data logger logging readings, water level readings. What are we doing? Every 30 minutes we're doing, right? So you get on your laptop, this software, you punch in what interval or frequency you want the readings, and in this case we're doing every 30 minutes. So this thing continually collects water level readings every 30 minutes. So if it's in his well, and he gets up in the morning, and his wife takes a shower, and he does a shower, and then you're using the kitchen water and a dishwasher, we're going to see a noticeable drop down in the water level. And then when they leave to go to work and the well's stagnant, the water level's going to come back up. This records everything. This records all of that, okay? And I'll show you one other thing. When I mentioned the M-scope, which is up there in the background, this is a water level indicator, or what we call in the industry an M-scope. So this has a little probe on the end, and when it makes contact with water, it'll beep. And this is marked off in an engineer rule, so 1.5, 1.6, and so on, okay? So let me just put my thing on. You drop it in, so that if this is the wellhead, you drop this down, it hits the water, it should beep. See, it beeps and gives you the water level. And you just hold it up to the top of the casing, and you say, okay, the water level's 100 feet, 0.32. Why do I care about that? Because when Patrick's in the field with the applicant's hydrogeologist, if it's 132 on the M-scope, we want to get on the laptop, interface with the data logger, and make sure it's saying 132 feet, not 400 feet or 2 feet. Okay, so that's like a cross-reference in the field to check that data logger and make sure it's working. So we'll just put this in here and we'll continue on. Okay, I think there was some emails flying around about the understanding of a rock well. Okay, so all of us, I have a rock well at my house. I live in Bedford. This is the principles behind it. Pointer. Okay, so the well casing is sticking out of the ground. That's a well cap. This is usually a 6-inch steel casing for a residential supply well. If you start getting into like larger applications like commercial wells or irrigation wells, sometimes they're 8 or 10-inch casing. Most residential wells are 6-inch casing. So they drill through the overburden. This is sand and loam and clay. Okay, we call that overburden. It's unconsolidated material. And then they hit rock. If you've ever seen a well rig, they're huge with an air hammer, and it spins with a carbide bit, and it drills down into the overburden into the rock. Then the driller just hits rock and he sets casing. This is the casing here. Okay? When the casing and the drive shoe is driven into the rock, they'll then pour concrete, literally Portland cement, down in the hole, and they'll grout around the casing to grout it and secure it into rock. The grout acts as an anchor for the casing, and it prevents water from migrating down the annulus where you just drilled and into the bedrock aquifer or where you're trying to get your drinking water. Then they literally just drill open hole right into fractured rock. So the water in bedrock moves through the fractures. It's not like if you go out to Long Island, they have wells that, we put in wells that do 2,000 gallons a minute. That's all sand and gravel wells, okay? In the bedrock, it's all the secondary permeability features, we call them, lineaments and fractures, okay? So I'm saying that to you because if you and I live an acre apart in Bedford, and Patrick's my neighbor, he might have a 100-gallon-a-minute well, and then you come to my house, I have 1 gallon a minute, because I'm not intersecting the same fractures he is, and he's got a good well, and I have a bad well. Okay, so that's what I want everybody to understand. This, I'll go really quickly. So then they set a submersible pump down the well, and it's hooked on something called a pitless adapter. It's called a pitless adapter because in like 1978, something 68, something like that, someone really smart invented this little gadget that would allow the pump to hang below ground and run a pipe to the house of your pressure tank and then go off to distribution in your house. If you're like my house, which is an older house, your well might be in a pit. My well's in a pit because it was drilled before it was a pitless adapter, and it's only like 100 feet deep. Okay, so there's most newer wells, like the picture of the well I showed you guys a few slides ago, they're all start at like 300 feet. Some of them is 5, 6, even 700 feet deep, okay? All right, so this is, now the data logger's in the well, we go download it, this is what it looks like. So this is actual data that we collected from well A on November 18th. You were out there, right, Patrick? Yep. All right, so you see here, time, 21 minutes, 4 hours and 51 minutes, and so on. And then this is the water level. At 21 minutes, it was 10.725 feet to the water in the well. Then over here, let's say someone got up in the house and turned on the dishwasher and took a shower, the water level dropped down to 21.58. If this is the first reading we collected on that well for that day, we call it the static water level, okay? So the difference here, static of 10.7 to 21 is like about 10 feet, all right? Because they turned the water on, it dropped 10 feet, and then you'll see it went to 21 here, and then it came back up and started, see how it fluctuates? So at 18:21, maybe they were done with dinner or whatever, it's all military time, then is that military or hours? Probably.
Military, yeah.
Okay, so at that time of day, the well was 10.4 feet. So it recovered from here to there, okay? All right, here's a hydrograph of that data plotted on a graph. So this is, on the y-axis, you have depth to water, and on the x-axis, you have time of day. So you can see, it's probably no one home, right? The water level's pretty stable. Then someone came home, started cooking dinner, took a shower, whatever, the well dropped. Then maybe it was after dinner, they're done, it goes back up. And then maybe before they go to bed or the following morning, water use is shown on the hydrograph like that. I think that's all like, what, 5 hours of data there?
No, that's the 24 hours.
It's 24 hours.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the 24-hour cycle, right? 0 to 24. So that well A, that's their water use in a day, plotted on a hydrograph. All right, so I mentioned earlier, we're looking for drawdown in off-site wells. Like, is the applicant pumping so much water that it's affecting his well, his well, his well, and my well? So this is a project we have in upstate New York in Sullivan County. And this is a well, believe it or not, it's 1.2 miles from the water we were pumping. And we were pumping a lot of water. We were pumping like 220 gallons a minute from a couple wells. So this is before the test. Here's when the pumping test started. So that's pump on, pump off. So here's this gentleman, his family, just going along his merry way, using the well, pumping cycles, coming back up, pumping cycle, coming back up, and so on. Then we turn our pump on, and you can see all of a sudden, you see the same noise, so to speak, right? He's still using his well the same way. Here's his pumping cycle. But then when we turned our pumps on, started pumping a lot of water, his well dropped. So it went from about 12 feet all the way down to about 28 feet. And then we shut our pump off, and it's really obvious we shut it off. Here's his constant pumping cycles, and it started recovering. Okay, and we have more data, but eventually came back to static. So that's an indication if Patrick's pumping water, let's say he's irrigating his golf course, and my well's next door, I might see something like this, where my well drops when they start irrigating the back 9 or whatever. Okay, so that's an example of, hold on a second, really obvious drawdown in an off-site well. You had a question?
Joel Greenstein from Croton. You said that there was no significant drawdown during the test. What would constitute a significant drawdown?
Okay, that's a really good question. So, we're not running, in this case, for Sunshine, we're not running what's called a pumping test. So we're not literally saying, let's take those 3 wells, pump them at their capacity for 72 hours and see what they do, okay? They're already permitted wells. What we're concerned about is when the facility expands and their use is in place, we want to make sure that their use isn't impacting your well, his well, and so on, okay? Now, to answer your question, discernible drawdown is something obvious on a graph like that.
16 feet?
Well, no, discernible drawdown to us could be a quarter of a foot. We'll see it. We'll see the drop. It could be 2 feet, okay? But it's all relative, and I'll use my well as an example. I told you it was 100 feet, right? If you're pumping your golf course and my well drops 90 feet, we have a problem. That's a big problem, because basically I only have 10 feet of available drawdown in my well, and you might be drying my well up. However, if my well is 500 feet deep, and you irrigate your golf course, and my well drops 10 feet, it's not as significant. Okay, so that's what we're weighing. We're weighing the noticeable drop in the well, the drawdown related to pumping, and do you have a shallow well or do you have a deep well, and how much available drawdown do you have above your well pump if I'm pumping water and there's a hydraulic connection between my well and your well?
Is there some objective criteria, the number of feet remaining, the percentage used?
Yeah, there
the
is.
number of-
It's all a matter of your well construction, where your pump is set, and how much the pumping is drawing your well down. Okay, so I'll just reiterate. If your pump's set at 400 feet and your well is 450 feet deep, and I drop it 3 feet, I don't care. You have tons of water in your well. There's no way you're going to know that I dropped your well 3 feet. If, however, your pump's set at 80 feet and your well's only 90 feet deep, and then I see on my hydrograph, I drew your well down to like 2 feet above the pump, we have a problem. So let's say that scenario were to happen, and I documented on behalf of the town that they did that to your well, then we're going to go to them and say, listen, what was your name again, Mr. Wolf?
Joe, Greenstein.
Greenstein. You guys drew down Mr. Greenstein's well to what we perceive as a critical level. Therefore, you need to mitigate it. How are they going to mitigate it? You need to pump less water, possibility. You need to set Mr. Greenstein's pump deeper if it's available in your well. You need to drill Mr. Greenstein's well deeper. Or if there's no access, you need to drill Mr. Greenstein a new well. And that's on the record in the Offsite monitoring well program, and what some mitigation measures would be if your well was that impacted. Okay? Want me to give him the mic?
Hi, Adam Stoller, Offsite Pageant and Roselle. We represent Cynthia and Jeffrey Manicherian in Newcastle. So you said a minute ago that you need to know what the pump settings are in the well to know whether there's been drawdown. Do you have?
No, we don't. No, we don't.
I
We don't need to know where your pump's set to see the drawdown.
Uh-huh.
We do need to know where your pump's set if there is discernible drawdown, because then I want to make sure that Mr. Greenstein's well is not going to be put out of service because they pump too much water.
Okay. Do you know where what the pump set is for each of them wells?
So
that are in
someone,
the
I think,
program?
the Manicherian sent an email with some good questions in it, and that was one of them.
Right.
And so I'll get to that, but long story short, when Langen and Brian Blum wrote the letter, after we reviewed everything, I think someone cited me and said, Mr. Canavan and HES want that information. So the answer is, we want it from them, and we're gonna get it.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get well depths and pump settings if we can get them. Now, I'll tell you this, a lot of people don't know how deep their well is, and they don't have the driller's log. Okay, so if it's your well, and I don't see any drawdown, I'm like, well, I don't really care where your pump's set, 'cause I'm not affecting you in any way. If I, however, see 20 feet of drop in your well, then I'm probably gonna say to the applicant, hey, Mr. Greenstein's well dropped 20 feet. You better pull his pump, sound the well, call whoever services Beal or Goulds or whoever, and get all the information so we know that Mr. Greenstein's not going to be affected by your pumping. And that would happen in that scenario,
Okay.
okay?
So the second question I had was that you mentioned that Sunshine is not being requested to do a pump test of their wells because they're permitted wells already.
Yeah, they're already on the record community supply that is existing.
Now that you have the offsite well monitoring program going and you have the ability to do an on-site pump test that would mimic the water use of the new facility, why not do that?
Well, I'll get to that, because I got some stuff with me. That's a good question. I'll explain what's being done and why, okay?
Okay.
All right, so that's an indication of some pretty significant drawdown. Okay, these are the hydrographs from wells A through H to date. Actually, not to date, because we're missing January, right? February?
As to
Where is
just-
it at? These are to year-end 2018, something like that. I'll show you them. And they'll all be online. Okay, so here's well A. So I'll explain what we're looking at. Y-axis, depth of water. X-axis, days and time of year. These histogram bars are precipitation that occurred from the nearest weather station. It's plotted on the X-axis. And here's the group that lives in this house, well A. Here's their water use. Okay, and you can see pretty similar pumping cycles all along. All right, now, to the gentleman who was just up, the attorney, if we saw on this graph, well A, it went like this, then all of a sudden it started dropping, we got to start seeing what's going on, okay? We start asking questions, we start looking at pumping rates, getting the Class C operator reports and so on. We're not seeing anything here. This is just Mr. and Mrs. A and their family just living along merrily, pumping their water and using their well, and everybody's happy, okay? Same thing, why do we have two A's?
Well, this is our data.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I told everybody in the room that we go there, we download our own data, we plot our own hydrograph. This is our hydrograph. So if you look, they're similar, right? They have similar pumping cycles. There's a different time frame on ours, but the same downward trends from pumping on this hydrograph are on this one. And there's no discernible drop like, uh-oh, we got a problem because now the water level in his well's here, and we know Sunshine was pumping X, okay? This is well B. Now, whoever lives in this house, my guess is because there's a long drop, a steep drop here and here and here and here, I don't know, maybe they have, they're like my kids, they take 5-hour showers, you know? That's probably what my well hydrograph looks when my kids get home from school and start showering, okay? So it's the similar situation. Long term, you see there's no constant drop like I showed you with the offsite drawdown effects up in Sullivan County. In fact, from this point, which is July, to here in December, is actually recharging this well, right? Because the hydrograph's going up. If you drew a best fit line through that, that's what that would indicate.
This is an actual well you're monitoring?
Yeah, this is well A. I mean,
On their property
we
or on
protected the
on-
names and addresses because that's
Well B.
a well
This is
B, my bad.
Offsite well B.
Well B,
thank
and I can, I'll go, if you want, I can go back to that. This is one of the 8 I mentioned, remember?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're good.
okay, good.
Is that a glitch in the data for the
No, good,
full month of
really good
September?
question. So, what's your name?
Jim Smith.
Jim Smith just asked the question down here, right? Is this a glitch in the data? Is that a glitch in the data? Right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, for the whole month, it looks like the whole month of September.
Well, what happened here is this well was being taxed to the point where they had the data logger set at 348 feet, and the water level in the well actually went below the data logger, so it stopped recording that data. Okay, so whatever they're doing here, in this area, and here, they're pumping a lot of water and they're really taxing their well. I don't know who this is. I mean, I guess we could look it up, but that's what they're doing, okay? And if, I mean, my well, it'll, if you leave a sink running or something, in 30, 40 minutes, the water just cuts off because it goes below the pump. So that, you know, maybe at times we could ask them, maybe they're, they're out of water for 10 minutes or something until the well comes back up. This is a really short time frame though.
But the next one is a big gap, right?
Yeah, here it was drawn down and then it came back up. So in the past, on other projects, if we've seen that on like a pumping well, we say to the applicant, hey, your data logger the water level went below your data logger, figure it out, set it deeper, pull the pump, whatever you gotta do. I'm not sure we're at that point with this one yet, because of what I see here, long-term, okay? It's the same thing with this well. This is our hydrograph, okay? So you're seeing the same thing. It's below the data logger there, here, and here. Here's their hydrograph for well C, okay? And then there's our hydrograph. This hydrograph there's more time. Our hydrograph starts about there. So there, the applicant's hydrograph is plotted from here to here, and then ours starts here, so you can see the similarity, okay? Okay, well D, the applicant's hydrograph. Our hydrograph, HES's hydrograph. That's well E, theirs, and ours. And then well F, theirs, and ours. And the last one, right, G is the last one?
H.
Oh, H. I used to know the alphabet. And then H. This one has some pretty cool pumping cycles. They use their well a lot. I don't know who this is, but every time you see it go down, up, that pump's kicking on. And there's ours. So just as an example, our vertical scale is a little different than this one, and that's why these look higher, right? These lines look higher, showing the same thing.
Tony has a question.
Whoops.
Gail Martell's Newcastle. You're monitoring 8 wells, but how many wells are being impacted by the expansion? And what do you do if there's a precipitous drop in those 8? Do you mitigate for the dozens or hundreds of other wells that are
All right, well,
impacted?
I think the Manicherians asked that question in their email. All right, so to answer that question, I'll go back to what I said earlier. About 70 homeowners were solicited. So let's say you got a letter from the applicant, and you said, sorry, I don't want to be part of the program. Well, your well might be impacted by their pumping. Now, the goal is if I put this, and I won't know it because I don't have a data logger in it, okay? So let me give you this scenario. Let's say you call a town, and town calls me, and they say, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Gail.
They said Gail's well went dry. So it's likely, given what's gone on here, someone's going to have to come and talk to you. Like, well, why did your well go dry? Did someone leave the toilet running? Did you leave the hose running outside? But we won't know. We can't know. If your well were to go dry, I don't have a data logger in it.
I understand,
Yeah.
that's clear to me, but what do we do for that?
Well, let me
person with a
explain
dry
this to
well?
you. I'll go back
I
to
mean,
it.
they don't care, they want the product, the
So-
problem fixed.
Hold on a second. Let me
So-
show you this, and then we'll discuss. So, okay. So back to this diagram, right? Inside this 2,500 and 1,000-foot radii, they solicited 70 wells. The goal of the program and any off-site monitoring program is to get enough wells in the different compass directions that odds are if you're pumping water, you're going to see an impact. Okay? But if I live here and that's my well and you live here, and if this well drops 20 feet, your well might be being impacted. But I'm not going to specifically know that your well's dropped. I'm only going to know that this one dropped. And that's the idea here. If I pump 24/7 all the time and this well's not impacted, the odds are this well's not hydraulically connected to these 3 wells.
So let me answer the question a little bit differently, okay? Right now, there has been no additional water use on the site. The project was approved with no additional water use on site.
But
So
how is
listen.
that possible that if you go to triple or quadruple the
I'll
number
expl-
of
I can
wells,
explain that.
there's no
ahead,
additional
Bill.
water use? Honestly, that defies any logic. It
But
just
it-
does.
But it doesn't. So here's why.
That's crazy
They're,
math.
they're not doing any irrigation, okay? They were using up to 15,000 gallons a day, and they took the irrigation part of the equation out. And they said that we're gonna increase the hospital bed number, and they got approval for 100 gallons a day per bed, 122 beds, right? 99, right?
99.
So then you add that up, it's a certain amount that they can pump. I'll know. If they pump 80,000 gallons in a day, I'm gonna know. How am I gonna know? They're all metered. Every well's individually metered. And I can go to them, hey, why'd you pump well 3 at 50,000 gallons when you said you're only gonna pump 10? And then there's gonna be consequences.
Right, and so at that point, if he's picking up that they're pumping more than they should be pumping based on the data that he is reviewing, and we're getting phone calls from people who live in this area that they're having well problems, then we're gonna put 2 and 2 together, because the data that we have on site combined with the data that we're logging in neighboring wells, we'll have a good sense of who is being impacted.
Here's another thing, okay? There's data loggers in the 3 on-site wells. Do we have those hydrographs? Are they in there, in here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, so, on the on-site wells, each well's individually metered, and there's data loggers in it. So, I'm holding up a hydrograph of well 1, okay? That's the pumping cycles of well 1. Here's well 2. Okay, and then I'll show you the third one. Here's well 3. Okay? So, you have 2 things on site that we know. A data logger, hold on a second, data logger in each well, and a meter on each wellhead. So we know volume they pumped and what the water level in each well was doing month to month,
I'm just having trouble hearing you.
year to year.
Guys, focus on the conversation, please.
All right, so there's questions here, and then we'll
Please
answer
pass
them.
the mic.
Where's the mic?
He has the mic.
Oh, you have the mic, you just go ahead.
Yeah, hi, David Valdez, Newcastle. So, how long will the monitoring program go? What is the scope of time?
I
And
believe
will-
it's 2 years
A minimum of 2 years after the certificate of
after
occupancy.
C of O, and there's caveat in there that says it could go longer at the town's hydrogeologist's discretion.
Okay, is there an opportunity for, say, new residents to join into the program? On Glendale Road alone, there's like 8 new people that weren't there in May, but they're there now. Did they get a notice? Do they know that they could?
Well, if you have their address, I can tell you.
But,
You know what?
but here's the thing, if you're a new resident and you want to be monitored, we can speak to the applicant, because again, they were trying to get a good distribution. If the applicant does not have other people in your neighborhood that are monitoring, I am sure that they will want to monitor your well. If there are other people in the neighborhood already being monitored, they may say not necessary at this time.
So along Glendale, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they have 5 wells they're monitoring. Who has the mic? So we'll go there.
I know we're skipping ahead a little bit, but the on-site hydrographs, will those be posted now and going forward?
All right.
The
Fine with me.
yeah, the applicant has asked us not to post them online.
Why?
They said they did not want to. They asked that it remain confidential. They said it's being sent to our hydrogeologist and they did not want it posted.
If I submit a FOIL request, can we get that?
I can't answer that, but I'm sure our legal will advise.
Okay, if it turns out it's something that the town can release, I think it
We
makes
will release
sense
it.
to, but then at that point, I think it makes sense to post it, because if I FOIL it and I just have it and there are other people who are interested in that data,
So is the protocol for you to contact the town attorney and then we'll figure it out?
No, they will put the FOIL request into the town.
Okay,
When
good.
we get the request, we will take action on the request.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Peter Green. I'm just slightly confused. You say you'll know who's, pumped extra water because you'll have all these monitoring devices, but, what will the consequences be? First question, so the home needs more water for the kids and for this and for that and the other thing and cooking food and all the rest of it. What are you gonna do? Say to them, no, you can't pump any more water when they have no other way of getting water to the kids?
You mean for an off-site well? Is that what you're asking me, off-site or on-site?
On-site.
Oh, well, for on-site, they have a volume they're allowed to pump.
Right, but what if they exceed that? And that's the whole concern here is that,
Well, then the agency that regulates, the DOH, is gonna come down on them and say,
but seriously, if you look
it's how it works in New York State.
May I
I
finish?
have an answer for you though. I
But
mean.
I haven't asked the question, but
you
it's
asked
okay.
if somebody
Ask
did-
it. Go ahead, answer
No,
the
no, no,
question.
you asked what could be done if they were pumping more.
Yeah.
If they're not adhering to the conditions of their special use permit, the town will pull their certificate of occupancy.
And how long a procedure is that?
When we get a complaint, we go out that very next day, if not that day.
Right, but you have a couple of hundred very, very sick kids in that building. Pulling their C of O, first off, can you imagine the press will say to that? What you're gonna look
But-
like?
but
I mean,
what-
no, but I'm seriously, I'm talking about the serious practicalities of applying this. There's a lot of theory, may I please?
Yes.
Okay, there's a lot of theory here about, well, we'll be monitoring this, and there will be consequences, and we'll pull a C of O. But the fact of the matter is, you're gonna have several hundred very seriously ill kids, not mobile, in this house, in this, this facility, which requires a certain amount of water, access, other things. If they start pumping so much water to, to fulfill their medical mission there, totally legitimately need this water to do what they're doing to take care of these kids, what do? What's the solution if they pump too much water? If there's a bit of a drought and the aquifer dries up? If there's, this is not the most geologically stable place in the world. If there is a crack and the aquifer starts to leak, I don't know, what do you do? How do you?
It's pretty
deal
stable
with it?
geologically, but, all right, so, look, there's regulations in place, all right? So, I'll give you an example. If you and I develop 500 acres in Orange County, and we decide we're gonna do 2 community wells, okay? For us to figure out our water budget, it's 110 gallons per day per bedroom, okay? So, if it's a 4-bedroom house, it's 4 times 110. So the same thing's been done here. It's on the record that this is what for years and years, they collect data and say, this is a conservative number. If you live in a 4-bedroom house, you're gonna use 110 gallons per day per bedroom. And if I metered your house or mine, we're not using that. Maybe one weird day, you decide to fill your swimming pool or something, but it's, on average, throughout the course of the year, that's what you're using.
Right,
So it's nothing new, like, it's all been done, is I guess what I'm trying to tell you.
And I have to tell you.
Sorry, just to understand what the gentleman's saying first, before I move on to another person. So you're saying that you believe that there is adequate water in this aquifer for the full use that the home would make, plus all the people who live around it, plus any reasonable development that the town would permit in the area?
So based on the 6 months of data that I have and what they're pumping, the answer to that question is yes.
And by a factor of what? And what is the normal factor that is?
So right now, I'm 100% confident, based on the data I've seen on and off-site, that when they pump their wells, what they're using, they're not impacting anybody off-site.
And how much wiggle room or, growth room is there in that? If they pumped 50% more, they would be, or if they pumped 3 times as much?
They might be, and I'm gonna see it. Because this data logger's in 8 wells, and I'm gonna know they pumped well 3 at more than they said they were gonna pump it, because I have the meter readings.
Okay, and so then the final question then is, so what if people pump too much water? What if the wells go down?
People like
What
you,
do
you mean like an off-site person?
On-site, and.
Well,
too
you're,
much water is
if I
pumped.
live off-site here, you, me, everybody, we're not regulated, no one's, you could
Right.
turn your well on and water your lawn.
No, but-
right
but-
now,
but
if you
what's
wanted
the
to.
solution for people who might be stuck without water if the aquifer?
Oh, well, we
runs
talked about that. So if someone off-site's grossly impacted, it's affecting their water use, then there's safeguards in place or mitigation measures, what they're gonna do, lower a pump, drill a well deeper, drill a new well. You can read that, it's all on the record. That was a condition of approval.
Right, and I would like to add, all of this water analysis, the water budget, the conservative levels, those were all dictated by their on-site water operator, the Westchester County Health Department, their water professionals, not only hydrogeologists, but geologists, testing and analysis that was done underneath sonar, etc., and confirmation by the town's consultants. So, when these approvals were written and the work that went into those approvals, we had certain safeguards put in place to ensure they're not gonna be pumping outrageous amounts of water. Absolutely. In order for them to get their C of O, they need to demonstrate that their off-site irrigation is in place, that their storage tanks are in place, that their irrigation is separated from their well water.
So I'll give you a good example here, but to what Sabrina's saying, my well, nobody cares if I drink benzene, because it's not regulated, right? It's my well, I own it. I have to sample my own well to know if I'm drinking MTB or benzene. If you live in, trying to give you an example, Salem Chase over there off 22, that's a community well. That's regulated by the County Department of Health and the state, just like these wells are. So this here is the Class C operator report. Here's the master meter, okay, and I can read off what they use in January. January 9th, the master reader reading was 4,100 gallons. So on January 9th, that facility, in that 24-hour period, used 4,100 gallons. If you want to know what well one pumped, name a date. January 15th, 3,810 gallons. Well 2 was offline. It pumped 0, okay? Well 3 was offline. It pumped 0, okay?
Well, while you're discussing the pumping levels, can you talk about the tankers of water that we're doing?
Yeah, we could talk about that. All right, so in August, I don't know the exact dates, one of their wells had needed work. I think they needed to, well 1, yep, thank you. They needed to do some repair, and I think they installed a new pump.
They dug it deeper.
Oh, that's right, that was, thank you.
That one.
So that well was, thank you, what's your name?
Cynthia Manager.
Thank you, Cynthia. So well 1 had to be shut down, because as Cynthia just said, they were gonna drill it deeper. During that time period, they needed the same amount of water. The facility was gonna use the same amount of water. If you recall, well 3 was out of service because it had the radon issues, right? They were designing the radon treatment system. So they weren't gonna just shut the hospital down, so they brought in tanker trucks.
No, but in fact, they have claimed,
Sorry. Hi, Cynthia Manachurian. In fact, they claimed that well 2 was sufficient to operate the facility as is. In their pumping data and submitted to the ZBA, they suggested they could run the whole facility on well 2
You know the gallons per
currently.
minute? Well 2.
I don't,
That's
so why bring in tankers of water from outside?
because well 2 couldn't handle it.
Well, that's not what that is not
What they submitted to the
Do
ZBA.
you have that on? I don't.
We do not have that.
I mean, I'll review that. I don't recall seeing that.
It's in the engineering reports that they submitted to the county health department in 2015, those 2 reports.
Okay, so I want to show you a hydrograph and explain. All right, so let's use this hydrograph as an example. The question was raised on the record in emails, and there were concerns that folks were seeing tankers going on site, and then they were saying, well, it's not true background, you weren't pumping well 1, and so on. So one of the things I said, well, even when there was no record, I mean, there was no indication either way on the hydrographs when they were pumping just well 2 or well 1 and 2 that there were off-site impacts. So they brought in the tankers to augment their water supply. To Cynthia's point, and it's a fair one, if that's on the record and they said that well 2 could supply them, then I have to go back and look at,
Yes, they are.
right, in their current configuration, then I have to go back and compare what the well capacity is there and compare it to water use to make sure that that well can handle it. So that I don't know, and that's a good point. But the point I'm making with the tanker trucks is, if they were pumping less water or more water during that period, it's not showing up anywhere off-site. That's the response to what I saw on the record from Langen, your group's hydrogeologists, and WSP.
So, but it wouldn't show up off-site if they're using a tanker truck, because the tanker truck is providing the water, not the on-site wells. And so just another point that we can throw into the mix here is that the idea that they're using 15,000 gallons per day now, that's not right. I mean, they're using.
I just told you what they were using.
Right,
Yeah.
so they're using like between 4,000 and 5,000 gallons per day right now. So,
Right, but prior, the introduction, it was stated they were pumping that water, and we're going to find out. So,
Right, so
to
what
where
I-
you're
I
going
just-
with that, if they go back up to 15,000 gallons,
Right.
I'm going to see it if there's offsite impact.
Right.
But
So I
right
just
now,
wanted
I'm
to-
not seeing it.
I just wanted to clarify that the data that's been collected so
Yep.
far is not 15,000 gallons per day on site and looking at what happens off site. It's like 4,000 to 5,000.
Sure, what they're pumping now,
On-site.
I get it, exactly. So, but I didn't explain myself properly about the tankers. What I was saying was, they were delivering water, and they were likely pumping less water, right, because they were only using one well. But then they got the well back online, and the hydrographs looked the same before the tankers came in, during when the tankers were there, and then after when they turned the wells on. That's the point I was trying to make. In other words, it was irrelevant. Other than to your point of well two, what we just discussed about well two.
Can we just dig down that a little bit? So in their application, they said they were using 3 wells to do 15,000 gallons a day. But in any of your data collecting, you never saw them collect more than 4 or 5,000 gallons a day. So this was in their application, but that data never existed.
Well,
This 10,000 that was being used for irrigation just.
I'm pretty sure I saw days, and I can look back, where they hit 8 or 10,000.
Okay.
You know, on their well reports.
But still never 15.
But I don't think I saw 15. But I will now, though, because remember, I don't think the wells weren't individually metered till we all got involved, your group and my group. So now they're individually metered, and you're gonna see it.
They're gonna plant the acre of corn again that they irrigated. Like, it's.
You're not supposed to.
Okay.
I mean, I'll come by with you guys and tell them, get rid of your corn.
Can you also discuss the rainfall situation during this year relative to historical norms and the drought scenario you mentioned in your first letter?
Sure. Very good question. We're up 12 inches this year, I think, in precipitation. That's why the program's going for the duration it is. Because it's going to see, if we have less rainfall, we're going to see what's going to happen. Want to give you the mic?
Can you, so we're up 12 inches, can you put that in a framework relative to the drought scenario you first outlined in your initial letter?
Yeah, so 12 inches is like 62 inches of rain instead of 51. And in a drought scenario, it's about 30% less. So somewhere around, 40 inches, 41 inches, okay? Doing what I've done as long as I have, I think if there was even a drought, you guys have plenty of water here, but we're gonna see it, we're gonna monitor it, and we're gonna know what's going on.
That's not what you said in your first letter.
Well, what happened in the first letter was, I remember this, they did their, I did a water budget, I looked at their water budget. How many acres is that site again?
33.
33. So we did it for the 33 acres, we said you had X amount of water, and oh, by the way, in a drought, like you're saying and you're pointing out, it's gonna get a little dicey because you're using as much water as recharge. Then they came back and they said, well, if you consider the drainage area of the entire contributory,
Otherwise, other people's property.
well, it's your well too. So if I was living in the watershed, I'm part of that recharge. So, and I was like, well, it's a fair point. In the drainage area, when you consider the drainage basin and what's contributing to everything around,
So we're
is
basically
water.
allowing them to take water from homeowners.
No, well, we're not, right now, we're not seeing that, and that's why we're monitoring it. But look, bottom line is, you're my neighbor, I turn on my sprinklers, I might be taking some of your water, and your well might drop 10 feet, but it doesn't mean that I'm ruining your water supply, or you can't take a shower at night, right? You follow me, like the scenario I explained.
Yes, but if you open a hospital, that changes the scenario.
Well, no, it doesn't. If the hydrographs that we're monitoring indicate on and off site that it's not, and they're pumping what they say they are, it's metered, and we're looking at it, they're not taking any more water than they said they were gonna. Right, I want to reiterate it because it's a really important point. The on-site wells are metered individually. I read some readings off to you. There's also a master meter. Prior to all this, there was just one meter. They had no idea what they were pumping from any well. It was just, we pumped 10,000 a day. Now we know what each well's doing. We have the hydrographs on site for what the groundwater table and the bedrock is doing. And we also have 2,500 and 1,000-foot radii wells being monitored so we can observe and see what they're doing. just being honest, it's a lot of information, it's thorough, and it's a really good study that's going on. I mean, I've done 800 of these, and you know, all the best practices are in place to safeguard against the very concern you have.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ann Martin. I'm in Hawks Avenue, which is,
You want, no one in this room's on the well monitoring program, right?
I am.
Oh, you are, good.
So
Let me go to that map.
My question would be, I asked for a hard number from Tom Cusack at one of these meetings before. We all talk about that the wells are being monitored and, you know, steps will be taken to fix it if there's a
You
drop.
155, you said?
155 Hawks
Okay,
Avenue.
you're right here.
Yes. the
Okay,
back
I'm
of our-
sorry, go ahead. So you
Yeah.
said you spoke to Cusack
Well,
and,
at one of these meetings, and they're like, well, if something happens, if you're negatively impacted, we'll deal with it. But nobody's ever defined, and nobody would ever give me an answer, is what does that mean?
Okay, so
All the
one of the
She
gentlemen
wasn't
over
here
here.
in the beginning.
yeah, asked
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry.
So no, I'm happy to
So
explain
is
it.
it 10%,
So-
20%,
So do you know,
50%?
do you know how deep your well is?
It's about, we pulled it up once, about 250, 300 feet.
Is that where the well pump's set, or that's how deep your well is?
That's where the well pump is, so I.
Okay, so let's say your pump's set at 250, just round numbers. I look at your hydrograph, and let me go back to that one where you had the interference. All right, remember, were you here for this when I explained well interference?
No, unfortunately.
All right, so let's say this is your well, okay?
Yes.
You want to come over here? So if this is your well, and I know your pump's set at 250 feet, from here, let me just give you quickly. We started pumping a well here, and we started seeing drawdown in this offsite well a mile away, believe it or not, until we ended the test and started coming back up. So if I look at your hydrograph, and I see 10 feet of drawdown in your well, I don't care, because your pumps, you have 240 feet of water above your pump. You're not even gonna know that the wells took your water, so to speak. However, if I look at the hydrograph and I see it drop 80 feet or 100 feet, or it's like 50%, a 50% drop in your well from pumping, we gotta look at it more carefully. And then the scenarios, which if you weren't here, would be, hey, you're pumping too much water. You go back to the well records, right, the pumping rates, and it might be so obvious, like, well, all of a sudden they pumped well 3 to 100 gallons a minute. They were pumping it at 25. That's when we say, you've got to go back to pumping at 25. That's one example. You could, if it's persistent and it goes for a long period of time, we could say, we have to set her pump deeper if there's available drawdown. Or look, there's no available drawdown. You got to deepen the well. So those are some of the things on the record that are well mitigation measures.
So you're saying it's all relative, that you're
It
going
is-
to
it is
decide
all
whether
relative.
whether it's negatively impacted. It's all an algorithm that's going to be
Right, like if-
determined by you.
Like I said before, if you're my neighbor and you draw my well down 2 feet and my well's 100 feet deep, I don't care. I still have a ton of water.
Can Sunshine fire him?
Yeah.
No, he's our employee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, so just to clarify, a question came in. Bill works for the town of Newcastle. Okay, he is not employed by Sunshine.
Right.
Sunshine Children's Home has their own hydrologist.
That's Cusack and W.
Yes,
No, I get
yes,
that.
and,
I get that.
but Tom is also watching this as well. Okay, so Bill is checking the work that's going on and doing it independently. So if
Right, this-
Bill gets this, so is
This
Tom.
is WSP watching well A.
Right.
This is me watching well A. Okay, so you didn't see my little show here with the water level and explaining how these things work. Patrick, one of our geologists, literally follows them around with our laptop. And we download the data, our own data, create our own hydrographs, and then we measure the well to confirm that their data loggers are working properly.
Wait a minute, you get, they come to our house to measure, but I only see one person, I don't see two people.
No, well, how many times have you been out there?
We're there once a quarter, so.
Once a quarter, and they're there
like every
monthly.
third month.
Okay.
So we're there once a quarter, they're there monthly.
So it's an algorithm that you determine based on the depth of the well and the pumping over there. If we were to go dry, which we haven't in whatever 20-something years, if your algorithm didn't think that it was related, we could challenge that, right?
You can challenge it, absolutely.
Okay, just because.
You could hire another geek like me or Patrick to challenge us.
Right, I just, worst case scenario,
Yes, worst case
It was
scenario,
open to be
yes.
determined, and I don't like that. I like sort of hard and fast, but you're saying there's no way to do it hard and fast. It's a moving target.
So you know that, so this I'll tell you this scenario, this story. This, FYI, this project, these wells are being reviewed by a group called the Delaware River Basin Commission, because this area is all tributary to the Delaware. That regulatory agency we're working with to decide what the impacts here indicate for this family and for the project. He has a question back there.
Okay, so, yeah,
Microphone.
I have two questions. So David Valdez, Newcastle Red. So for clarity, Sunshine benefited from bringing water from Offsite to their site.
During that
Right,
time
so
period when the well
is
was.
there a measure of the total gallons or supply of water that they received? Because obviously that
There is,
didn't come
right?
out of their
We
wells.
have that, didn't they?
Right,
It's a
so-
great
so-
question.
so
So
that-
let's
that's my-
answer that one first.
Yeah,
Great question. We called them out on it. I either think I have it, or they're in the process of getting it to me.
I mean, and it's hearsay, but like, look, today, there was a huge water truck headed up their driveway this morning. We saw it. So I was like, okay, whatever.
It's news to me.
Okay,
It's
so
not
that-
possible, I'm just
Right,
saying.
right.
I'm just
they need to
asking the
check.
question, I'm not asking
They
really
don't
for an
need to
answer,
check.
because you don't know yet.
No,
But
we
I'm
don't know.
saying, for clarity, they benefited from water that came from another place, and you're trying to establish a baseline, but they got who knows how much water from that other place. That impacts the well capacity measures. My second question is, if I understood you correctly, you're not doing a pump test like the one that you keep referring to in this graph.
No, well, this is an example of
You're not
drawdown I'm
removing
trying to show
water
you.
from Sunshine's wells to see what it does. So then how
Well,
can
no, we are. Every time they turn their pump on,
Right, but
the
it's
data
not-
loggers that are setting the wells are seeing what the drawdown in the well, how much they're pumping, and the data loggers that are set off-site.
Enough pumping.
So-
Well, hold on a
but-
second. The data loggers that are off-site are seeing, so to speak, if on-site pumping is
So I understand
impacting
that,
off-site.
but they're sort of shut down right now. They're under construction and they're 1/8 the size they will be when they complete their projects.
All right, but,
So-
so stop comparing square footage to what they're pumping. Because they're allowed to pump a certain amount, which is 99 gallons per 122 beds or rooms. All right, so if it was Brendan Byrne Arena or whatever over there, they're only pumping what they're allowed to pump. And that's what I care about.
Okay,
Right,
so
I care about how much
you're
they're pumping,
saying that they're
if it's
currently
impacting
pumping
any of
what
you.
they will pump in the future and that there's no evidence of drawdown.
Right now, so I'll reiterate that point before.
Right.
So,
Like a third of what they're.
hold on a second though, because remember, but I'm gonna see that.
Yeah, I know.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I know.
I agree with you.
Okay, so you
So when-
agree they're pumping a third of what they will in
Well,
the future?
whatever, what's the number they're allowed? I don't even
They're
know.
allowed up to 15.
All right, so they're allowed up to 15,000 gallons,
And right now
okay?
they're pumping what?
Right now they're pumping 5 to 9 or 8, okay? So,
Well,
In the new configuration, they're gonna have 15,000?
hold on, let's get one question at a time. So, who has the mic?
Yeah, and then, so when you get to that, my other question, if you could comment on the quality of the water, right?
Your water or the on-site water?
Both. So what
Can't.
is there to make sure that the water doesn't get polluted based on the demolition and the construction and whatever else they're
Well, they
doing?
collected one round of baseline data
What's this?
from the 8 off-site wells.
So
far.
let me talk about this a little bit, because I think it is really important. Right now, Sunshine's water supply system is regulated by the Department of Health. They have some quality issues on site,
Radium is a big problem.
okay? They have to do filtration on their site to make the water good enough to be used as drinking water for their on-site population. The program that was approved by the town was not a quality program. The applicant, due to one of the property owners who was concerned about the quality, about the effects of installation of this equipment in their wells, they asked to do a quality sampling.
That was done.
That was done, and that was done for any property owner involved in the program who wanted to do it.
Iron, manganese, bacteria, probably it.
Yeah, maybe color.
Radium?
Color,
No,
no,
not
no
radium.
radium.
No radium. The town
You
approved
don't have to sample your
program-
well for radium, it's not
The
regulated.
town approved program was not a quality
I mean,
program.
I would, but you don't have to.
Well, that's why I'm laughing. In a bedrock aquifer, you and I both know radium's a problem in a bedrock
If I live
aquifer.
next to you, I'm sampling my well
Exactly.
for radium and radon.
So why did you not do it for these homeowners?
Because it's not, it's on the homeowner to figure out what their water quality is when it relates to radium.
And while we're talking about radium, in a bedrock aquifer, when you deepen a well, you increase the probability of having a radium contamination issue.
Not necessarily. You might decrease the probability because you might hit more fractures that don't contain radium, and there's more water coming into the well, diluting out the radium is coming from above where it was before.
Okay, so if I
Now,
have,
what you just said could be inverse of that, what I just
so if
said.
I have a radium contaminated well and I deepen it, and I have new water coming in, then I have a less contaminated well.
If the water coming in
Okay.
is not
But if-
higher in radium, yes.
Okay, but if
It's
I-
gonna dilute it.
If I have a non-contaminated well, and I am forced to deepen my well because my neighbor is taking more than their fair share of water, I have a possibility in a bedrock aquifer of hitting radium.
I think you made a fair point, I agree.
So let me carry that forward, because, quality in everybody's well is an issue. If it turns out that there is a connection between surrounding wells and Sunshine Children's Home, okay? There's a high probability that there is not, but if there is an instance where there is,
And how do you know there's a high probability there's?
because we
We're
did.
seeing it
Go
right
ahead.
now.
And-
But they're
But
not
also,
measuring at that
quality.
level.
we had
Or
throughout,
quality.
excuse me, throughout the approval process, all of the analysis that was done, that was verified by the town's consultant, confirmed that their maximum use on site, which was dictated by the county health department, by the fact that they said they were not gonna draw any more, that they were gonna change how they're using that well water, that there is a high probability, based on analysis that was done, that said that they would not impact off-site wells, okay? With that said, if Sunshine has to go in and deepen your well, you have every right at that point in time to ask for a quality test.
Sample my well for radium, it's an excellent point.
Absolutely. Excellent question,
And
good
I
information
would,
to
I
know.
would say the same thing, I would back up that homeowner saying, it's
Absolutely.
entirely reasonable what they said.
And what they
Deepen
have
their
asked for.
well, you cause drawdown effects, we give them a whole suite. Part 5 analysis, VOCs, radium, bacteria.
Okay, and then I have a contaminated well.
And they have to fix it.
And
So fixing it, what's the contaminant? Radium?
radium.
Then you'd have to put in a stripper unit,
Okay.
take the radium out of the water,
Now, given.
and maintain it.
Given the issues the community has had to date with resolving the simplest of infractions, such as more beds than permitted, traffic on Sundays, clear cutting,
We're not here to talk.
I mean, that's
fades.
not my
But
expertise,
I realize this is
luckily.
not your issue, but can you understand the concern of the community that we're having problems with getting them under control with the simplest of issues?
So I'm gonna speak on behalf of the town. We're not here tonight to discuss that. Okay, and we cannot discuss that. It is, this meeting is for the off-site well monitoring program only. Okay?
understand.
I
So
can't
will
speak
ask
to
the
your
question in a
faith
different
in
way.
this program.
So, related to the wells, let's say you have a problem with your well. What is the process the homeowner needs to go through to have it mitigated?
Well, by past experience, they would call the town would call me. What's your name again, I'm sorry?
Ann, Marty.
Ann Martin's having a problem with her well. Bill, you and Hydro Environmental Solutions, you've got to look at the information. You've got to look at the data. You've got to talk to the homeowner. The applicant is probably going to go to Ann and say, what's the problem? We're going to look at the data. We're going to figure out what the problem is. Then it's going to come across my desk, and I'm going to say, I agree with you guys. You got to do X, Y, and Z. Or I disagree, you guys. You got to do 3 more things to the well to make them whole than you say you have to do. That's the process.
Who will enforce that?
The town, right?
Yeah, yes, the town.
How does the town enforce it?
We get the call from Ann, she's having water problems. I call up Bill. Bill, I need you to go do this. Bill is under contract with the town to consult with the town on this program. He will be working with me for a minimum of the next 2 years, if not longer, because the building has not received its C of O yet.
But how do you make Sunshine Homes spend the money to make the fix?
Isn't there a bond?
There's a bond, yeah,
there's a
there's
bond.
bonds in place.
So
How
usually
long is
what,
it in place?
so usually
It will
what's
be in
done,
place as long as it needs to be in place until the water issue has been, the offsite well monitoring program has been
they usually
stopped.
put a bond, this is what I've seen in the past, 20, 30, 50,000, whatever it is, and it sits there until the program's done, and no one has been impacted.
When is the term of the monitoring program right now?
2 years
Up to
after,
2 minimum of 2 years after issuance of the C of O to be assessed by the town's consultant.
so how long, does anybody know how long it's gonna take them to build that?
I think we're at least 18 months away,
So at a minimum, the monitoring program's gonna be
3 years.
almost 4 years. Oh, no, 3.5 years, 18
Yeah.
months, minimum,
Minimum.
right? They're 18 months of construction, we're there looking at everything. What is it, C of O that's issued? C of O issued 2 years after.
And there's a factor of maximum occupancy as well. Okay, so the town very well might say 2 years isn't long enough.
But who has the authority to spend down on the bond? How does
The
that
town
happen?
does. The town does.
Yeah, so I recommend to the town that your well was adversely impacted, and the recommendation is it's deep in the pump. It's $1,500. I call the local well guy, go to your house, lower their pump. The bond pays for the contractor to do that.
What's the amount of the bond?
I don't know offhand, I'd have to get back to you.
So they.
Yeah, it's millions, it is millions.
That's gonna sit there for
Yes.
2+ years?
Yeah, it'll sit there
Under
for
the
longer,
town's control.
yes.
They spread out the well monitoring. I think they only allowed like 6 because they're like, they needed indicative.
A distribution.
Area, exactly.
Let's go back to that, man.
So what if somebody who's not being monitored has
If they call up a
issues?
question, we will try and determine whether or not there's a connection to onsite.
That, and I'll say this because I think you missed it. There were 11 that agreed, or 10, I think it's 11. 2 or 3 of them were not accessible. They were in a pit, it was a nightmare trying to get they were gonna ruin the well basically if they started dealing with the casing or whatever, so they got omitted. 69, we said? 79 homeowners inside these 2 radii, 2,500 and 1,000, were provided, solicited, saying, hey, we want to monitor your well. Here's permission form, this is what we're doing and why. 11 people got back to him and said,
But don't you think it's time to maybe reach out to more of the residents and see if others will?
given the distribution I see here and what I'm seeing in the data log, from the data loggers and the hydrographs, no, I don't.
Can you confirm that of the 70 or 80 other wells that could be impacted, that if there's a problem, they will get mitigation as well?
I would say that if it's let's say it's your well, and we confirm that you were adversely impacted to the point where something has to be done, then yes. Then the bond would kick in and pay for your problem. We'd have to prove that you were adversely impacted from what they were doing.
Based on what you've said today, if someone had a dry well tomorrow, you would say, nope, not related, correct?
Correct.
Well, no, I would say it could be related, but I don't know because you didn't agree to have your well monitored.
Well,
Can you list,
I mean, I'm just telling you matter-of-factly, scientifically.
Well, you just said that everyone in the region is covered.
But
if they're not monitored, you just said they're not
And
qualified.
I'm going to disagree with what he said regarding that, because if you're not in the monitoring program and your well goes dry tomorrow, based on the information we've been collecting, what we know about what's going on site, what we know about the surrounding area, we would need to prove out that your well went dry because of what's
But they
going
did.
on site.
Right,
Okay?
but based on this conversation, I think the conclusion is no, because Sunshine is.
And I'm going to tell you
in
as the
compliance.
town, and the intended intention of the program was to determine if there were any off-site connections. I have to tell you, 8 wells is not indicative of the entire neighborhood surrounding this property and whether or not there's a connection.
It's a
Okay?
cross-section.
It is a cross-section, it is a sampling.
But let me give you this scenario. Let's say your well, you call a town, you say, my well went dry. Then it's gonna be investigated. Someone's gonna come out there, either I'm gonna tag along, or a lot of stuff's coming across my desk. I'm gonna review it, and I'm gonna figure out if this gentleman's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mitigation
So
measures need to be
I
put in
would
place.
just point out that your comment that everyone should be protected, and your comment that you wouldn't add anyone else new to the testing because you think you've covered it, is inconsistent.
Well, I have,
Based on what
Well,
he's seeing.
this map and what I'm seeing gives good coverage surrounding the site inside 2,500 feet. So, seeing the hydrographs and what they're pumping, I'm just telling you, sound science says you got pretty good numbers of wells, and you don't need to monitor 90 wells.
And what I'm gonna say is, based on the data that is being produced for the past 6 months that we've been monitoring these wells, it will be highly unlikely that any well that goes dry tomorrow is related to what is happening on site. And we will do the analysis to determine whether or not there's any impacts. And it could be a pump test on site that will dictate whether or not there's a connection. The town will do its best to try and stand by its residents and investigate the problems. But our consultant is gonna say, this is not due to what's going on site, due to the data and the pumping that is historically going on site. And because if you have to remember, on site, there are 3 wells. There is historical data regarding the amount of water pumping that has occurred on that
That's how
site
they came
over
up with the
time.
numbers.
That is how the Westchester County Health Department has been regulating this site.
Hi.
If they're
A
not in
couple of
Hampshire.
different things. Just to respond to that one, the historical data, I think a lot of people from the greater Teton community were upset by the historical data because Sunshine Home was asked for 5 years, and they cherry-picked roughly 2 years as suitable data to be reviewed. I don't know if you remember all of that, but
I remember
all
it.
5 years were not actually part of the review, and the community doesn't understand how or why that happened.
Well, I don't know that we're gonna talk about the review right now,
I'm just saying, just to
Cynthia.
respond to
Li-
that
Listen, I
comment.
understand, but I'm gonna say, where I sit and what I do on a day-to-day basis in this town, I know there's a lot of distrust out there, and I understand. Okay,
So-
I understand that.
Why do you understand?
Because I've heard you all and I've listened to you all complain.
But do you think they're paranoid, or do you think
Well,
there's
here,
a reason for
I'll
We're
say,
not talking about my personal opinion here, at all.
so I'll say this, though. This is a fair point. Before your group got involved and started scrutinizing this, and you had your hydrogeologist and your attorney, and before I got involved, from where they were then and where they are now is light years ahead of what they were doing and what they're required to do now.
I think we've helped this project to be more scrutinized, for
I
sure.
agree. Here I am to scrutinize with you.
I'd like to just go back to a couple of other points as well. The notion of the 99 gallons and that's what they were approved for 122 beds when they reopened. Number one, it was my understanding that the well monitoring continues until they are fully operational for 2 years, meaning those 122 beds are filled and everybody gets to see what happens when the facility is functioning fully loaded.
I believe that's accurate.
Not just C of O, because they won't move kids in really before they get at least a temp C of O.
I believe that's actually on the record, what you just said.
Yeah, so it's longer than that.
Yeah,
I believe.
well, and again, if the conditions say C of O, the likelihood that it will stop at C of O is very
No, I don't think the
unlikely.
conditions do, I think it says 2
Whatever
years
the
after.
conditions say will be put
Fully
in place.
occupied.
Again, the town wrote the conditions to make sure the community was protected.
Well, I just want everybody to hear the
Correct.
same facts.
I can look it
Number
up.
two, one of the reasons I think the community is quite concerned is because they managed to be approved by Westchester DOH for 99 gallons per bed per day, when in fact the state standard is 175 gallons per bed per day. And it's the state that gave them their CON, Certificate of Need, and the state that will be reimbursing them, and the state, if they wind up using 175 gallons a day because that is a state standard, what happens actually?
Well,
The
there-
Westchester DOH shows up and says, no, but we agree to 99, you can't use the state standard?
That's my understanding would happen, yes. They're,
What, the state will take away their CON and tell them to move?
so when they received the approval for the 99 gallons per bed,
Which was a
They-
county approval, not a,
right, but the state was deferring to the counties, just like in, let's say, the spills program, I have a leaking tank, you have a leaking tank, the Westchester County Department of Health, the DEC, the state defers to them locally. So that's what went on here. The DOH, to the satisfaction of DOH in our review, with the information they provided, the 99 gallons per bed per day was deemed reasonable.
2 years of data when they asked for 5.
My recollection is 5 years, but I'd have to go back and look at it.
But they only they only approved them based on 2 years of 5 years of data.
So we're not gonna
Okay,
debate that
so-
tonight,
okay,
Cynthia.
that's fine. Then going back to the 70 or 80 people who got letters, is there just a way to list on your well monitoring page a list of addresses that you expect this list of addresses to be in touch with you
It's right here.
specifically if needed?
It's already been done.
It's posted?
I don't know if it's posted, but this is table 1 of solicitation activity. This is on the record, isn't it?
Oh, can I have it?
What, Nancy, Ann, what was your name? Ann's listed here, 155 Hawks Ave. And more-
So here's the thing, when we had our informational meeting last time, people were really interested in joining the program, and they requested that their information not be circulated, not be posted. If you want a list, if you want that table, foil it. Okay? Listen, we try and work with people. We were asked not to post their names, addresses associated with their well points online.
I'll go a step further, not to spend the applicant's money. I mean, I think this gentleman here has some concerns he raised. Plot those 80 wells on that map. See where they are, see how many people were solicited around the area.
No, I get it, and I just want to say one thing. Number one, the community awareness of what is going on in light of the blasting and the future things that are going to happen on that site might actually change people's minds about whether they want to participate. And so I would ask you to discuss with your committee to open that up and to offer people the opportunity to participate in the well monitoring.
I will speak to the applicant
Because
tomorrow.
I think that would show
Yes.
good faith that you're really looking out for the community as well as which happens.
I will make a commitment to everyone in this room tonight that tomorrow I will make a phone call to the property owner, and I will ask if he would be willing to open up the monitoring program for additional wells to be monitored.
Thank you.
no?
There's nothing I can do.
And how will we all find out what the answer is? Will you post it online or email one person to?
If everybody has signed the attendance sheet
Yeah.
and has provided me with your emails,
You-
I will update you via email
There you go.
tomorrow.
But
But
honestly,
please make sure-
What incentive does the applicant have to expand the program? It would be a negative to him, why would he want to do that?
Listen, I can't, listen.
And there's a cost to it as well, I can't imagine, the likelihood would be 0.
Yeah.
I can tell you that now.
You know what? Listen, I can't, as much as I can't speak for you, I cannot speak for the applicant. I will do my best to have the program opened up. I will ask him to ask his consultant to examine the activated wells and identify if there are additional wells in the areas that are currently not being covered, and I will ask our consultant to identify that for me as well.
But why can't you
And I'll
mandate that or
join with you
demand that
in
he
that. I don't
expand?
know if
Why is it in the applicant's?
I can't.
Well, it's not it, well, so that's a good point. It's not, this was never in the they're not dictating to you guys or me, they're definitely not dictating to me the number of wells. Because they solicited 70 wells. That's a boatload of wells in this area, okay? Then, the scientific reason here is, you got pretty good coverage on north, south, east, and west of the site. 8 wells in all different directions. So when we run pumping tests, or we're doing this kind of monitoring, that's what we're looking for. So that when this stuff comes across my desk, that's what I'm looking for. If they had only these 2 wells here, I'd be like, yeah, go back to the drawing board, get us some more wells. And that back and forth actually went on. So they're not dictating anything.
There's one part I'm not clear about, though. If someone is not currently in the well monitoring program, but then is impacted when the water usage goes way up and the well might go dry, the person who is not currently in the well monitoring program, who later has a dry well, has no recourse?
No, not at all.
No, but
Not
I
at
thought
all.
you said that, oh, but you didn't get your well monitored, so I can't.
No, but we
use
have,
it.
no, what I said is, I can't, if your well goes
Found your
dry,
word right there.
I have to investigate it before I can just say, well, how do you know it was the pumping on site? How do you know it wasn't his well? How do I know you didn't
But how
go
would you
away
know
for the
if I'm
weekend?
not monitoring? How would you know?
Well,
Because-
I'd go monitor your well, short term, and see what's going on. If the water level comes back up in your well, maybe your softener was on back flush, it got stuck on back flush. Maybe the toilet handle in your bathroom got stuck and dried your well out, you know?
What if it wasn't my fault?
Well, that's what I'm saying, I'm gonna go there and try and determine
Investigate your
it.
well. So listen, you said something that was very different than was said before. The gentleman over there said, what if my well goes dry tomorrow? You said, what if their water usage goes up? And I would,
Well, I'm saying
let me
once the
finish.
facility opens.
Well,
and
yeah,
is using
exactly.
more water.
You had a point in time where something on site changed, okay?
A giant
And-
hospital
Yeah,
opened.
something changed, okay? So in that instance, that change, and then your well goes dry, I'd look at Bill and go, maybe there's a problem here. Because you had a change that dictated an action. Okay? If it goes dry tomorrow, I'm gonna say they didn't make any changes on site. Bill, did they do anything different on site? He's gonna say no.
Water delivered.
But they've been having water delivered for the past several months.
Why don't they have to tell you about those water deliveries?
They are telling us, we asked for
But they're
that
not.
information.
You just said you just found
No,
out.
I'm gonna
about
get it, no, I knew all about the water, it was from you guys. I think it was the Manicherians that pointed it out to me.
They don't
Or the
have to tell
T-Town
you
group,
how
right, is
many-
that the group that pointed it out?
They're not required to tell you when they're getting water deliveries.
No, they're gonna send me, I'm gonna have the volume of water deliveries, we requested that.
Correct.
I think Langen and that group pointed that out, we reviewed it and we agreed.
They didn't volunteer it to you.
No, they
You
didn't.
asked. And how, they do it next week, you gotta keep asking?
Well, now they have to provide it, because we've asked for it.
What they've
Not after
done.
the fact.
No, I want the water deliveries whenever they get them.
And aren't
But,
they
let me just,
But aren't
people,
they using more
but
than
you're not, so
99
look,
gallons a day
I get it,
right
the
now?
water deliveries concern you guys, but I keep going back to the same thing. Oops.
Guys, I wanna stay focused, it's getting pretty late.
But aren't they using more than 99 gallons a day right now?
No, so
They're not.
here's what I want everybody to know.
You're using 4,000 to 5,000 gallons a day?
Or how many?
And
They're-
that's,
Somewhere in the neighborhood of
Gallons per bed.
3,500 to 8,000 or 9,000,
and
depending
how
on.
does that compute to beds?
Okay, so here's what I want you to know. Whoops. These hydrographs, let's put this one up. These hydrographs are telling us if pumping on site is impacting your well, okay?
I understand that.
So what I keep saying the same thing. If they delivered water here, let's say they had 10 tanker trucks from this day to this date. Let me ask you, if they delivered water here all the way to there, is that impacting this well?
Yes,
How is it impacting that well?
because there was no drought.
So let's say the water is delivered here, right? No impact. Then they were pumping regularly here, no impact. Water delivered here, no impact. Pumping here regularly, no impact. So the point I'm trying to make is, we want to know, I get it, they were pumping less water because they had to augment it. What I'm saying is, we've seen a time frame where they pumped the water they said they were pumping, and there's no impacts off-site. If they bring in more tankers, I'm gonna get the information, I'm still looking at the hydrographs, I'm probably not gonna see an impact. If it's built out, and they start pumping more water, and this is well A, and I see this drop that I showed you guys, we're gonna investigate it. That's what I keep trying to tell you. Water tanker or not, we're not seeing, whether they're pumping normally, which they're doing the majority of the time, or when they were fixing well one, and they weren't pumping as much water, The hydrographs look identical. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Folks, I'm gonna send, and not to interrupt, but I'm gonna send this around again. Please write your email addresses clearly associated with your name so I can respond to you.
Can I recognizing that we've been going for a while, I just wanted to talk about some of the data requests that we had made that through Langen.
Okay.
Okay, but you know what? That's not what this is intended to do.
No, well, all right, so.
No, I'm
to put
serious.
some- No, all right, so just to put some context in why we're asking for this, and the reason that Mr. Canavan agreed that this data is important, is that what's been posted to the town website is the off-site hydrographs and the on-site collective pumping for both.
Usage reports.
The usage reports, which are the same usage reports that go to DOH, which show the collective use from all of the wells on site, right?
Correct.
So what we need in order to evaluate this data is, and I have a list, and I just wanted to go through, because some stuff you said foil, and other stuff that said it will be posted on, I think it'll take 1 minute, I could just go through and say, here's what we've asked for, and you can say, it'll be posted, or you can say foil it, or you can say, we're not getting it.
It's in the Langen letter.
It is in the Langen letter, but because
Alright,
we
just
have
say it,
everybody
just
here.
go,
Okay.
we're spending more time
Okay,
talking
great.
about it.
Okay, the individual amounts pumped from wells 1, 2, and 3.
We have that.
We have it, you need to foil it.
Okay.
I read some of that off just before.
Okay, great. The on-site hydrographs,
I have it.
Foil it.
posted, foil it. Okay. The depth of each of the off-site wells in the program.
Don't have that.
Okay.
So what-
No. The town has that associated with the individual applications with homeowners' names on them. Some of the depth information is there if the homeowner knew how deep
Yeah,
it
that's
was.
the problem.
If the homeowner didn't, there is no depth of information. Those individual applications are not posted.
When 79 homeowners got that well questionnaire from WSP, it asks you what type of pump, well, pump setting, depth. A lot of people don't know that.
Okay, but to the extent it's out there and we don't need names, but even, we have wells A through H, if we could say
So, I'd
A
say
is
foil it.
this. Okay.
We might, do you know if we have the depth for those 7 or 8 wells? Okay.
Okay. The distance of the off-site wells relative to each other, the map is gonna get posted, right?
That's a to-scale map.
Great.
So you guys could just get out your little engineer scale and measure them all.
And that map
if
is
you want-
actually posted on the website
If you don't want to
right
do the
now.
work and you want them to do it, request it.
Okay, and then,
We can't, if we don't have it, we can't ask it under a FOIL.
No,
You
look,
do not
here's
have
what I'm
that.
saying.
We don't, you have to calculate that yourself.
right,
Okay.
that's why I'm asking, I
Don't
was
have
trying to-
that.
Okay.
I can
And
help,
then-
No,
show you how to
can't.
do it.
We can do that if the map is to scale. And what was the other one? So you've asked for the water delivery numbers.
When I received your letter and Langen's letter, and I reviewed back and responded, we asked for that information.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Yep.
So that's in the town's possession, I can foil
Not
it, or
at
it's
this
not?
Nope,
point.
but
Yeah.
I will call them tomorrow
Okay.
and yell at them.
Can you let me know when you get it, and then I'll put a foil in?
How about you
I'll check back with you.
check back?
All right.
yes.
I like this.
You
All right.
should, today's Wednesday, Friday, Monday, we should have it.
Okay, I think that's it. That was very helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Please stick to the agenda, folks. It's getting late. I think we're gonna do about 10 more minutes of questions.
Blasting was mentioned earlier. Can you talk about the possibility that blasting opens up new fracture lines?
We're not talking about that
No.
tonight? I
Let me
will,
rephrase
so I
that.
will in the future, and there's all kinds of testing and protocol they have to follow in order to do what they're supposed to be doing there.
Okay, let me
Remember
ask you-
GZA was involved and all that stuff, I remember reading
It's
it.
on the record.
It's on the record.
Let me ask it a different way. Is it possible that blasting changes the hydrogeological connections between Sunshine's wells and other wells?
It could be possible, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that answer, that's helpful.
Hi.
What's a what?
That's a helpful answer, thank you.
Just telling it like it is.
Several people who are here are actually very interested in the future of the Hudson Wellness Center, which is
You're not here
not
to talk
in, I don't know if you know anything about it, but it's not in Newcastle, but they own 20 4 acres in Newcastle.
Yep.
And
She
you
would-
had mentioned that you're very interested in that project.
So do you know what I'm doing now
Yes.
on behalf of the town,
Yes.
I'm doing for Cortland.
And we
You're
have
doing the
asked for
same
his,
thing
as
for
a
I am
town,
reviewing their application.
but it's a different
and,
procedure.
and
So-
as a town,
Not really,
well,
no.
well, and folks,
Wait,
listen,
I
we're not
haven't
gonna,
asked a question
I
yet.
understand that, but I wanna clarify.
Yes.
He said he was working for the town of Cortland.
Yes.
As the representative of the town of Newcastle, who has also been looking at that project.
Yes.
He has permission to share information with the town of Newcastle.
Okay. But I'm gonna be simpler than data and so forth. Based on the 1,500 and the 2,500, I don't know if you've seen this, circles that you have agreed to in terms of wells around Sunshine Home and what would be considered a good location to monitor. This is the other project and the same rings, and it's like a Venn diagram. And when Mr. Cusack was here at the beginning of the well monitoring project, we asked him if it were possible that there would be connection between the aquifer system and these projects. And his answer was,
They're entirely
possible.
different drainage basins.
there are different drainage, it's possible, but they're different drainage basins. But he
So,
didn't rule
so a
it
drop
out.
of water falls here, the water won't go, I mean, I don't have the topo in front of me, I'll just
Right.
try and explain
We
it to
can
you.
show it to everyone else.
All
And
right,
this
so-
is also the.
So a drop,
the
this is
reservoir
Hudson Wellness,
system.
right, this is
running
Hudson
through the middle.
Wellness, this is our project.
Let's turn it this way.
Whoops. Is it the right way?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good, sorry. So, these are entirely different drainage basins. So all the rain that falls over here, recharges the groundwater over here is completely, and I can show you, I mean, we did the drainage analysis. I mean, I guess we gotta get permission from, are we?
I've gotten permission.
All right, so, well, we can email me and we'll share away.
How about you request the, you know,
We can,
based
I
on
can
this?
get you that
Well,
analysis, Cynthia.
but here's the thing, make a request, and I can ask him, well, we need to go through official channels in order to get him to provide us information on that project. So if you make the request, I will get the information.
But I guess for the
That's on the
folks who-
record, I think.
The folks who are sunshine oriented versus the folks who are more, Hudson Ridge or Hudson Wellness Project, you can keep that, it's fine.
I got a million of them, thanks.
You got a million of them? I'm so glad to hear it.
It's just gonna be a placemat at the next picnic for me.
It's fine, I'll laminate it for you. But do you have any curiosity about these two projects in any way interacting with each other in terms of
I have
water,
tons of
water-
curiosity, because it came up at
They're-
Portland.
Yeah.
And we did the analysis,
And?
and they're not interconnected. I'll,
And
FOIL, I'll show you the whole thing.
Not foil, send me an email, and I'll forward it to him.
Send an email, and it's all been explained on the record, I'll send you the whole thing.
Well, I think everyone wants
Yeah,
to
yeah,
know
whoever,
about.
yeah.
Actually, can I just ask a simplifying question? So even if they are overland different basins, is it possible that there are fraction lines that connect the basins?
Yes, but I can show you that the analysis has been done, and they're not. So that's why I'm speaking with such confidence.
Saying yes and no.
Because it's well, she just asked me,
That's two different
is it
questions.
possible that a fracture or liniment could go between the two drainage basins? I said, yeah, it's possible, but it's not what's going on there when you actually look at it. That's what I'll show you. If you guys request that,
Yeah,
remember, I'm working with the town,
right.
no problem, we'll show you the analysis.
Fairs.
Yep, I'm a taxpayer, trust me, where I live.
So are we.
And I'm
am
a
I.
taxpayer in Somers, where my building is, and
And
my kids
so-
don't go to the school.
And any possible impact to the watershed for Indian Brook Reservoir, which is overland right between these two projects?
Well, no. Well, we talked about that, and I'll get you that information.
No, you'll be busy.
No concern. You'll see, maybe. You'll agree with me, I doubt it, though, but
I'm all about things that are logical.
it's scientific, and we can correspond however the proper channels are.
Okay, another question for you. Back to well one.
You want the, you
Back
want,
to well one.
Okay.
No, it's okay. I have that one in my head. So it was unexpected that they would drill deeper, and they did call it maintenance. However, they had already submitted to the ZBA well one at a different depth that was approved as part of the well monitoring process. They agreed to put their transducer at the old levels of what the well had been to monitor, and you've gone out and confirmed that that's exactly the right location within well one for their monitoring
For the, you mean, so the setting of the transducer, you're saying?
setting.
Yeah, because I want to know, they could set, if that
They
well,
went and corrupted the submission in terms of well one,
you mean
by
collecting the...
deepening it.
No, the water level's the water level. The water level in the well is the water level in the well. A data log is collecting it every 30 minutes.
Well, the data logger wasn't there when they submitted. I don't remember how deep well one was and how many.
Didn't they go to like 700 feet or something?
I don't know
They deepened it like
offhand,
200 or
but
300
again,
feet.
we're talking about improvements that Sunshine was required to make based on the Westchester County Health Department, who is regulating their on-site water system.
They had to, so Cynthia, when they drilled that well, they had to go to the DOH and say, well one, our community well, we want to deepen, and this is why. Write a letter, include everything, send it to the DOH, and the DOH said, okay, we reviewed it, you can now have a permit to go deep in your well, go ahead.
But they never brought it up to the town.
They don't have to.
Does that bother you?
No, because it's not, the town doesn't regulate the
Well,
community
it's not
supply
our-
wells.
It's not the town's.
Remember how I said to you guys,
They were submitting to the town
But
for a big expansion.
Right, but the decisions that were made and the basis for which the decisions were made restricted their water use based on known information as verified by the county health department, verified by several professionals who deal with this, and the board relied on the analysis that was done, and given the commitments that were made in the design and the management of the project under its expansion, the boards felt comfortable that they would not have an off-site impact. Anybody? All right, so we're gonna take one more question, folks.
I think we have two.
Two more questions, last two questions.
This is really a comment. This is truly not in my backyard. I live way far away from it. I'm here because I'm so upset that the trust has been broken for this group of people. I've been following the story, and I feel badly because they're saying, we're hearing tonight, well, if something happens to your well, we're gonna fix it. But how that's going to happen and how long that's going to take and what the process is. And of course, more than anything, they don't want anything to happen to their wells. And there's been a tremendous amount of mistrust built up with this applicant and things that this applicant has done. And so I'm here basically as to bear witness and say, I feel their pain. None of us in this community or any community would want to see these kind of things happen. And the perfect example of making it worse for me and I think everybody as I sit here tonight is, so they just had water delivered, which costs money, so no profit-making organization would want to do that at a time when we're told they're not even fully to capacity that they're allowed to do right now. They're what, at half, whatever, because the construction, and yet they're having water delivered, but we're told that there's enough water for everyone.
but see, you're
So
mixing, you're mixing things up.
I just wanna put that out there, and everybody else knows so much more about this than I do, and somebody has a question based on fact, but I think a lot of people may be watching this eventually on, on video, and there are a lot more people that care about this and the process and the way this looks and the way it seemed to go, and feeling that it's incredibly unfair to this group of people, and I just want to represent that.
All right, can I just can I speak to that? So the water delivery was made because they had a well that was pumping a certain amount of water. Then the well was pulled offline to drill it deeper, so they had to get a tanker in to deliver the water that well was delivering.
This week?
Today?
I'm going to get that information. I'm going to find out. We're gonna find out if, does someone actually know for a fact that, is it Durkin delivering the water, right?
Yeah.
That Durkin delivered water to them today, or did you just see a Durkin water tanker? Because just because the Durkin water tanker drives up the road, doesn't mean it went to them, right? I'm just trying to be fair. So,
There are pictures of
Go-
those water tankers.
going up today.
Not today, but other.
I have those pictures, you guys sent them to me.
Let's get to the other question.
All right.
So, we're the ones who brought up the water tanker today. We don't know for a fact.
Okay.
We did see it come up. I thought I saw it turn in, but we were in a hurry, and it was like 7 in the morning.
Okay.
So,
Well, and we
I
can
can't say whether they
investigate
We
that.
can confirm that.
We can find out. So I just, my comment, and again, I'm new to this, so thanks very much for having this. This is very informative and helpful. And I just wanna say, look, this is a residential community. These are commercial enterprises in a residential community. And there's another huge commercial enterprise that is working on getting permits to build a drug treatment center in the middle of a residential community. If I came to the town of Newcastle and I said, hi, I would like to add 8 times the number of bedrooms that I currently have in my house, you probably would laugh me out of the meeting and say, come back another day or something. I just find the scale of what was approved, and it's already approved, to be breathtaking, like for a residential community. I pass by Sunshine every day. I'm worried about the lights. I'm worried about the traffic. I'm worried about the property values. I'm worried about the gossip about the water. If I were new and looking around and I heard all this noise about, oh, and the water, and it's gonna be polluted, and we're gonna have to monitor for 6 years, and what's going on, you know what, I'm not really, I can go to Bedford Hills. I don't need to.
Come on over, we're there.
Right, so this impacts us personally, and it is huge. So I would just say for town planning and zoning, you know what, we have commercial zones in Austining and other places for drug rehab or whatever. They don't need necessarily to convert a lovely mansion into drug treatment at the denigration of a residential neighborhood. So
That's the other project.
that's the other project. So
But-
that's.
Okay, folks, again, thank you for your comments, please. Thank you, and thank you all for your questions. I will ask the question that I committed to asking. If I can read your emails, you will be emailed the response. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Have a good night.
Thanks for that.